Hi, this is Nicholas Bell with IONCINEMA, here to review Stardust, the fourth film directed by Gabriel Range, which premiered at the 2020 Rome Film Festival and will be released courtesy of IFC Films on November 25th, 2020. So of course Stardust, you probably realize is kind of sort of a biopic about a portion of David Bowie's life. As the film opens, it tells us though that this is mostly fiction, which is a key to, if you happen to look it up, this was not a project that was authorized by the Bowie estate, so there's none of David Bowie's music. But it takes place across a very specific part of David Bowie's early career and what the experiences that would lead to the creation of his alien persona, Ziggy Stardust. So it opens in 1971, Washington, D.C. Johnny Flynn plays the young David Bowie wearing a dress and heels and having a hard time in customs, being detained and questions if he's homosexual. And we flash back and forth a little bit to earlier in his adulthood and also right before this US tour for his third album, The Man Who Sold the World. At this point in his career, his 1969 album his second album had Space Oddity, which was a big hit, and his only hit. And his latest album is considered unmarketable in the US. The first single they released is a flop. It's a very dark album about insanity. He's grappling with a lot of personal issues, as we come to understand watching the film, based on his half-brother's diagnosis with schizophrenia and a lot of other family members that have such similar diagnosis, and kind of trying to get out of his own headspace and also not being articulate enough to define who he is as an artist. So he's picked up at the airport by Marc Maron, who plays Ron Oberman from Mercury Records, who he doesn't have the right work visas, so technically he can't even perform. He can only speak in front of audiences. So he's playing kind of all these chicken shit gigs and fumbling around in all these interviews with journalists that, write him off as someone says, another fey, self-indulgent dandy. And indeed, that's kind of what he seems to be, because he, as I said, can't really articulate what he is. Meanwhile, he's calling his pregnant wife back home, played by Jena Malone as Angie Bowie, who's a little bit over the top and interestingly cast as a British woman. There's also a lot of peripheral things going on from this time that if you know David Bowie and at what point he was introduced to artists like Iggy Pop and Lou Reed and the legendary Stardust Cowboy and that kind of psychobilly genre of music that helped create what would become known as Ziggy Stardust. So we fast forward, the tour ends and we fast forward to 1972 when he is now Ziggy Stardust. And there's also no interest, there's no mention made. He had another album between these two called Hunky Dory that they don't quite go into. I did enjoy Johnny Flynn as David Bowie, although I don't know how much he seemed like David Bowie to me, but it was a performance that I overall liked watching. Marc Maron is sympathetic. As I said, Jena Malone is a little over the top. It feels very much like a film that they had to cobble together. Like Andy Warhol is on the periphery, and interestingly, of course, David Bowie would end up playing Andy Warhol himself years later. I prefer that if we're going to talk about artists in a specific point of their life, in these parameters, this felt a lot more authentic to the artist than, say, something like Rocket Man for Elton John or Bohemian Rhapsody for Freddie Mercury, which were very much packaged for mainstream consumption of these subversive artists, especially regarding their personal lives. But if you are a fan of Bowie, I can't help but think that this is going to be a major disappointment to you, other than a reminder of a fantastic artist and a musical creative icon. I would give Stardust 2 out of 5 stars. Thank you.
Hey, this is Eric from IONCINEMA.com. If you want to support us, subscribe below. For more reviews, interviews, film festival coverage from Sundance, Cannes, Toronto, you want to check out these guys on this side.